Welcome to Three Takes. I'm Ishana.
I'm Minali.
I'm Mona.
Three women.
Three generations.
One family, unpacking the questions we all ask. So Ishana, what's new with you?
I mean, I just saw you last week when I was visiting you in Boston, but I was checking my bank account statement today from June, and I really thought that I saved money taking public transportation, but I guess all these Uber Eats deliveries that I was doing really added up and cost me this month.
I still don't know how you girls use Uber Eats and Instacart so casually. It looks like it's a second nature for you.
Are you talking about because you don't use it or it's expensive? Like why are you
why are you so
shocked
surprised
that we use it?
I have never used Instacart in Charlotte. I have used once or twice when I was in Miami. And that's also mainly for groceries. Instacart I have used. And I really think it's quite expensive because I will tell you, it just recently happened after being away from 3 weeks and landing late at night. I gave it and I ordered groceries and I used the Instacart. And it says that your delivery fees will be waived. So I was really happy about it. But I thought, okay, I will have to tip the driver. But when I saw the receipt, there was service charges and they have added the tip on their own. And on the top of it, I didn't know there is something called in-store versus different price. So I ordered from closest, which was Harris Teeter. So there is a markup. I just felt like that there was just so much additional charge and I spent so much of money on something which could have been much better.
I guess it just comes down to like how much are you willing to pay for convenience? Like for me personally, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too cold, sometimes I'm just lazy to get out of the house. So I'm willing to spend like all those charges for convenience, but I understand what you're saying. I think it just comes down to like, what do we value? What are we willing to spend money for?
Yeah, and I think I had a mixed feeling. I was really happy to see groceries right at the front porch. I think that feeling was, oh, wow, you are driving in your driveway and there's a grocery right there. But then there was a mixed feeling. Oh my gosh, I think I was overcharged. So it was a mixed emotion with the money, And
it's like an opportunity cost, right? It's like it would take you an hour to go to the grocery store to do it. And you might be saving money, but I could do something else with that time and pay the money to get it delivered. So it's how do we use our time and our money, I guess.
Which I think would actually be interesting for us to talk about because it seems like in some ways we're all kind of being a little judgy on how we are spending our money. So I think it would just be good for us to talk about how do we manage our finances? How do we think about money in general?
And I think that stems from what was our view of money growing up. So I think we should all speak to what our view of that was growing up.
For me, I grew up in a middle-class family. We have a simple way of life. And I lived with my grandparents, parents, and my brother and sister. And my grandfather being a freedom fighter and really believed in a very simple life. So that's what I saw them and that's what I learned. We didn't have a lot of money, but we didn't have lack of resources either. And I was really taught to live within our means and make a habit to save a little even when you have a little. So, spending within your earnings, savings for your children in old age or your parents significantly impacted how I think about money and financial planning.
I think for me, I don't remember ever growing up with an allowance or really using a piggy bank to keep track of money. The way that I first remember dealing with money is honestly just seeing how our parents dealt with money. I would say, especially in the beginning, early elementary school, we had money, but I'd never felt like we were living in luxury. I feel like our parents were really good about making sure that the kids never really had to worry about money. I remember at one point, while Papa wasn't working, he was trying to build his own company. Our mom was the only breadwinner of the family. But kids' activities were never impacted by that. I remember we could still go to ballet, we could still do gymnastics, we were still doing extracurricular activities. But at the same time, they weren't spending a lot of money on themselves. I never remember our mom spending money on luxury purses or big designer names, you know what I mean? So I think the way our parents dealt with money growing up is how I see money. But yes, I don't think I was ever formally taught at a young age this is the amount that you have in a piggy bank. This is your weekly allowance. This is how you should spend and save.
Yeah, and when Minali says Papa, it's her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never feel like I grew up being like, oh, you're going to the amusement park for the weekend. Like, you get $15. You can spend it how you want. Like, in summary, I think we were given the freedom to have a lot of opportunities. I mean, I switched from a public to a private high school for my academic and for my athletic endeavors that I was doing. And that never was like a, oh my God, what does that mean now? And so, yeah, in short, and I think we can get into it further. I think for me, money was associated with like opportunity and freedom. And fortunately, I felt that I was able to do everything and anything I wanted because our parents set it up that way.
I would agree. And I also think like our parents had savings accounts for us. They also invested initially for us, like even when we were younger, and that those investments are things we still carry to this day. So I think our parents did set up a good financial foundation for us to build on.
Yeah, I'm curious, Mama, because me and Dada both have that opinion that we were, really given the freedom and opportunities because of what you set up until the point that we started to earn. What was your strategy going into raising us, budgeting, saving, also living a comfortable life?
Growing up, it reminds me, just 2 years back, I did a paper on understanding social economic status for my social identity class. And there was one of the things which I did say that I grew up that saving is important part of your life, even when you have little and living within your mean. So even when I got married and I came to US, Manoj, my husband, were aligned with our thinking was same when it came to saving. So we always agreed that we will always have a 401k. So even with from the first check itself, we always had a 401k. And I remember when Minali was 3 years old, that's time we started a 529. And when, of course, with Ishana, it was all as soon as she was born.
Can you explain to the listeners, maybe some who maybe don't know what a 401k is or a 529k?
Yeah, sure. So 529 is a tax advantage investment account, to encourage savings for future education's expense. And it can be for your children, for your grandchildren. And the 401k IRA, that's more for your retirement. So we did all of that, the general things, what we knew. But then as the things, the life stages and the different life stages, we realized that. And actually, I have to say that my husband is really good when it comes to financial planning. I learned a lot from him. The way I grew up is that it's saving. So you put it into saving account and you earn the interest. But my husband taught me is that you have to think about the inflation. Because you put money in the saving account, but if the interest rate is not higher than the inflation rate, actually your money is shrinking. So that was a new learning for me. He taught me that saving is good, but investing smartly is also very important. Because for me, it was just saving. It was just putting in the bank account, right? So those things I learned from Manoj that, how do you take some risk and then how do you invest so that you can have a income source from different venues.
I guess I have a question though. Obviously some of these investments are a risk, right? Where you don't know if you're going to get higher returns or if it's actually going to be a loss. And I know that you all were also building your company, raising us. We were involved in a lot of activities. Were you not scared on some of these investments, or was there always a portion that you were like, if this doesn't go well, we can still be okay?
Yeah. So I think we had made our life, and it's still now, not that complicated. As I said, we grew up in a thing that you really do within your means, right? So that time when we took the risks, which we knew that it has an impact, our kids' things won't stop. Or a bread and butter, or, our living in a house, or our basic necessity won't affect, right? So you take a risk. So once he explained, okay, with the savings, it has to be more than inflation. We started investing in different ways. And there was many times that our investments completely failed. But we did it in a diverse portfolio. So some helped, some completely were gone. So what happened is that you take a risk, but not at the cost of something that we will be on road.
Yeah, then what about you? I'm curious to hear your perspective as you've been in school for, I feel like, forever. How have you thought about money from your lens?
Yeah. And this is a question that I've been thinking a lot about lately. So my husband, Rahul, and I, we were both just going through some numbers with our finances, and we anticipate that our expenses will probably increase like fourfold within the next 3-4 years. Because right now we live in Boston, we're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we don't have a car, and we don't have kids right now. So when we think about our expenses for the future, we would like to have a car, we'll probably have a couple kids, and then also when you include like a house, hopefully, all of those expenses add up. So we have talked a lot about savings, combining our finances is something we are currently working on because our salaries go into independent accounts. And so we are currently trying to figure out how to navigate that. But I will say, like, Rahul's also really good with finances in general and investments. But I also think it's important for me to have a good financial understanding of like how much money I am making, what is my inflow, what is my outflow. So we're both just we're in that transition period where we're figuring out how 2 independent financial beings can come together to combine their finances. And it's definitely a work in progress. But one thing I wanted to ask Mama specifically, because I do feel like from a financial standpoint, you and Papa were just so much more ahead than where we are. Like Rahul and I are in our early 30s. You guys were in your mid-20s when you had 2 kids, the house, the car. Like, I'm just now finishing up training. We cannot afford a house in Boston. No way, even with like 2 physician salaries at the moment. So I would like to hear your take, because I do think a lot of people, especially in the millennial generation, do feel frustrated that we cannot have the things that our parents necessarily had when they were raising us.
Yeah, as I said, the time is a little bit different also, right? We got married younger than you guys did, right? And we had kids earlier than you did, right? So the responsibility came with all of that, getting married earlier, having kids earlier. So the earlier you do, the more responsibilities we had. Whether we wanted or not, we had to, because think, okay, how we want our life, because we have 2 young kids, right? How do we want to do it? And I think it has to do with because we were the first generation immigrants, right? We did not come with anything. It's not like that we had our parents or grandparents that support that if something doesn't work, we can rely on. With you guys, it was a little bit different because you guys at least have a financial security, stability base. So right now you guys can do a lot of things with your income, like different experience and all of them. You don't have to worry about house and stuff like that. But I think you will be surprised that as you start planning, you guys even start with much bigger salary than we started, right? So you guys will be able to really plan out everything. You have to really sit down what are your priorities are, okay? There is no end. You can buy a bigger house. You can do this much mortgage payment. You can do this much down payment. So you have to figure out what and how you want to do for your kids' schooling, So all of this, you have to figure it out, and you can really afford everything.
I think part of it also is that, so one, we are still in training, so we don't have the attending salaries yet, right? So that's going to be a big change. But also, like, there is no denying the housing market is tough. The job market is tough. Like, things are getting more and more expensive. But to your point, Mama, part of it is also where are we allocating our money? So yeah, like we have been allocating a lot of our money throughout the last few years through experiences, right? Like we travel quite a bit. We see family. We travel the world. Like to Japan, we just went to recently, right? I don't remember you and Papa doing those types of things.
I think another thing too is, and I actually had a sit-down conversation with Papa or Dad like last week, because I'm starting like a big journey financially, but like physically of planning a wedding. And I know there's like opinions on some people would rather have a wedding and save for a mortgage, or vice versa. And I mean, Indian weddings are like not just like a one-day thing. So it does add up. And going to grad school, having a pause on 2 years of an income, there was a little bit of just how do I use my money? Like, it's been 2 years and how should I do it? But I think Papa made a good point for you and me, like might help a little bit of like, right now we're still at that phase where like we can take a little bit more risk. It's about being strategic too, right? Like splurging here and there is fine. I mean, I'm paying like $25 for a cocktail in New York, like on weekends. But I think it's like with my starting income that I'm going to make, trying to maximize how much I can put in a 401k. That's how I kind of like see budgeting for me, where it's like I'm already subtracting how much income I'm getting in post-tax and how much I'm putting into savings. And like, that's the money I'm working with. And I still feel like I'm living comfortably, even though the market is kind of shit and things are like way more expensive in our parents' generation.
Can I ask, Ishana, because with so much of your money and like, some of the money that our parents like save for you, some of that has gone to New York City rent, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I think Mama was talking earlier about the 529K, which is an education fund that they set up for both you and me, and it can get passed down to grandchildren as well. And, I was fortunate to get an academic scholarship at NYU, so my tuition was not something that I had to worry about, but I still had rent that I had to pay, and I still had like residual savings and stuff from my previous career. But fortunately, I was not so stressed out about where I was living because that 529 account was dedicated towards education, whether it's tuition, whether it's rent, whether it's school supplies. So that's how I've also been able to not feel as stressed living in the city. But now that I'm also planning a wedding, that's like a big financial burden as well. And figuring out how I want to allocate the money I have left to a mortgage, a wedding, starting my own business one day, potential grandchildren. Those are now the decisions that I'm thinking and making.
I really think, as Ishana was saying, you can really plan all those things, right? So, for example, like 529. So, Minali, so you had got a scholarship, right? So that money you can really pass into kids, to the grandkids. But also, even with attending income, I would say that we were so much less income than what you are even making now. But even from the first paycheck, even it was little, we were able to do 401k, right? We were able to think about how we are going to buy a house. So I think right now it seems like that. But as you start planning and budgeting and your priorities, you will see that basically you should never spend more than what you make, right? And if you're able to save. So if you go backwards, you can do it. And I think it's a habit. Saving is a habit, and then investing strategically. Yeah. I think if you do that combination, you can really live a lifestyle and experience what you want.
To shift a little bit into it, there's also this like emotional side of spending, right? Like seeing on social media that everyone right now is in Italy. And I'm like, okay, I should be in Italy, but also, do I want to splurge on that trip? Should I save it? Should I experience the city that I live in? I think there's also this like emotion like tied to it. And I think for me, especially living in New York, where it's a city that never sleeps, it's a city full of opportunity. Sometimes I do have guilt on whether I am spending or even if I'm not spending.
So I think that also something that prioritizing, because you guys have a lot more exposure to social media than I had, right? When I was your age. So I think it is very, very important, Ishana and Minali, that your priorities are your priorities. Somebody else have a different priorities, right? So really creating those boundaries are important. Mm-hmm. Like, so for example, when you guys were young, and I actually, that one of my great mentor taught me that I could have not balanced everything. So I love to eat out. If anybody knows that I love food, I love to eat, in the restaurants, and I can try all different cuisines.
She'll be like the first one in the line at weddings for the food.
Yeah. Yes. And I admit that. But when you guys was growing up, So I have to, most of the time, I have to say for my girls' night out or the lunches, no. It's not just because I didn't want to spend that money. I knew that my friends were doing it, but in my priority, it didn't work that time. Now I have all the time because I go out with my friends and everything, but in that time, going and watching your tennis, do your activities, and only so much time I could have taken off from work. So you have to really prioritize when and what you want to spend on, right? Because on a different life stages, you will be different. Daycares are a lot more expensive now, right? So all those things, education is a lot more. So you guys have to plan as you plan your life. What are your top priorities?
I mean, childcare has gone insane. In Boston, like people were telling me the average is like $5,000 for nanny daycare per child here in Massachusetts. But beyond that, I think that's a good point because you're talking about how expenses and priorities change based on the life stage that you're in. I think Rahul and I are just kind of getting out now. Like a lot of our friends are getting married. So we were spending a lot on like bachelorette parties, like traveling to like engagement, weddings. Now it's starting to shift more to like baby showers. But during that 2-3 year period of time where so many people were getting married, a lot of our extra expenses were going into just attending events.
Can I ask you a question of that? Because I know you and Raul have been married for a while now and you're thinking about the next stage. I think there's also a conversation about once you're in a relationship or once you have a spouse, how do you talk about financials with each other? Like, you know, me and my fiance live together right now and we share rent despite the fact that I'm in school and he was working, but that's just like how we decided it to be. But also like we spend our own individual money. Like we are not, like we look at money as ours, but it's not like physically one joint bank account. So I'm just like curious to like have a conversation on like once you are living with a partner or you're in a serious relationship, like how you're balancing your own money versus shared money.
This is a really important conversation too, because finances can truly break a relationship if people are not on the same page about it. And Rahul and I are not always on the same page about every single thing that we spend on, but we do have conversations about it at least. So initially we decided, okay, like we are also going to split our rent kind of regardless of, because he's 1 year ahead of me. So technically his salary is slightly higher than mine. But we were like, no, regardless, like we're going to split our rent evenly. But we don't do like tit for tat type of thing where it's like, oh, I buy the groceries, he's going to buy dinner. Like we don't really Venmo each other. We're not keeping track of expenses like that. We both review our credit card statements separately. If there's a month where like our expenses are way off for one person, like we'll definitely question it. So when I spend in general, I spend in like bulk because I won't buy things for like 2 years. And then when I buy something, I'll buy like 5 of them. So I remember one time I bought like $800 worth of bathing suits.
Wait, what? I'm like, that's crazy.
But then I won't buy bathing suits for like 4 years.
I think that might be when she was doing triathlon, right? She has to do the swimming and stuff like that.
I wish I could say it was because of triathlon, but it was not. Like it was
you live in Boston, you don't even live like in a beach.
No, but what I'm saying is like that was like an investment because I know I'm not going to buy swimsuits for another 4 or 5 years. And also I spent that $800 with money that I worked extra shifts. So we have something called moonlighting where we can work extra hospital shifts. And so I spent it on that. When I told Rahul about that, he like kind of freaked out. He's like, why would you not save that money? Why would you buy $800 worth of swimsuits? Which is a very, very fair point. Like I'm not saying is wrong. But I was like, you know, at the end of the day, like I worked this extra shift for it. Like I think sometimes I can splurge on it. So then we decided after that point to like, at least for now, have separate finances. So at least our salaries go through our own individual accounts and any extra money that we make also go in individual accounts. That's how we handle finances for now. And also the way that we spend money is like kind of different. Like he loves like the latest technology, right? So he'll get like new phones, new gadgets like every 2 years. Like I'm fine with my MacBook Pro from 5 years ago, right? So it's like we will spend our money on different things, but this is all going to change because, again, we're in transition phase. We're working on trying to combine our finances. So the conversation's ongoing.
You were asking Minali before, like, you know, how did Papa and I did it? Like, you know, the planning and all of this. So one of the things, and Minali, Ishana, for you, I think patience is important. Sometimes I don't want to label that. But I think with millennial and Gen Z, your generations, if anybody just suggests or say something you think we are crossing the boundaries, like, or why are we saying that, asking $800 for a swimsuit, I think that was a fair question. Like, finding deals and using money smartly, I think that whoever you learn from, it's good to learn that, right? It's not a questioning, or it's not saying you don't do that. It's, could you do something better, or can you do it smartly? Okay, you can still have that experience. But I think it is important to learn tricks, tips from people and see how you can spend smartly.
Do you remember back in the day there used to be like box tops for kids?
Oh, on the cereal?
You would save on the cereal boxes.
Oh my God.
So I think that was probably my first type of savings that I did, was like those box tops. But I remember doing that because Mama used to also like cut out coupons from magazines to like buy groceries. Do you remember
and put
that?
it in a big plastic bag that we would like take. That's so true. Yeah, because nowadays it's like, I don't know, Amazon Prime Day is starting in a couple of days, and I'm just like waiting for that. It's all digital marketing that I'm finding out all of these trends. But going back to Mama's thing about tips and tricks, I think once I moved to New York, I have been wanting to live here my whole life, and the only time to do it really is in your 20s because of how expensive it is. But I remember having a sit-down conversation with both Mama and Papa on like, how can I really be aware of like my money, my spending, my budgeting? And there's like a couple platforms. I know there's so many out there now, but at the time there was one by Mint called like Intuit, where based on the income I was getting, how much roughly I was thinking I would spend on groceries, traveling, public transportation. Then every month I would get a comprehensive report on like where I was going over, where I was going under. And I think that helped ground me a little bit of not feeling so overwhelmed every time I'm swiping my Apple Pay on the subway station paying $2.90. Like, I was able to holistically see where all my money was going, and then thinking about like where I can kind of shave off here and there, which ultimately did save me like a good amount and like as I went down.
Yeah. See, a lot of this just takes time and energy, to be honest. And I think it's just a matter of if you're willing to do it. And like, quite honestly, like during residency, I barely had time to do laundry. So I wasn't as diligent about my money spending habits.
But Minali, never feel that it's late, like, you know, because I'm still learning. I will tell you that I'm from accounting and finance person, and everybody tell me, because you're an entrepreneur, you understand balance sheet, profit and loss, EBITDA and everything, you must be very savvy. But when it came to our personal finances, because Manoj, my husband, is so good in that, I never took the initiative and interest. It's much later on that I started saying, okay, you know what? I really need to understand where it is. Like, you know, I need to understand how to invest, how to, you know, do. So in addition to he explaining me, I'm sitting down writing notes, because for me, I have to write notes. And then also recently I started listening to the podcast, Net Worth and Chill with Your Rich BFF from Vivian Tu. And I think she's a Wall Street girl who turned into entrepreneur. She talks about everything like business, finance, career, debt, credit card, savings, weddings. So it's really, I learned a lot from her. So, you know, you also try to find different resources which are easy for you. And she has really amazing podcasts if anybody ever interested in.
That's a good point in terms of resources that we use, because I think doctors in general like are pretty crap when it comes to finances and investments. So one book that's pretty famous out there specifically for medical professionals is White Coat Investor, which I've read. And then more recently, I've started listening to Financial Feminist and Girls Who Invest, both awesome podcasts that give really good like high yield tips and tricks.
Another resource I have, I think at least for a lot of people in the business world, I'm sure that the like medical facilities would have this too, but nowadays, like through insurance and benefits at your company that you work for, you can actually have a financial advisor, and you can actually like meet with them to understand like through your company, how can you dedicate a portion to your 401k? How can you save money? And that was something I used in my previous job as well, to just have that extra person who can give me a resource, especially if you're not surrounded by financially like well-equipped people, using a financial advisor through your company is typically something that's been provided to employees who
But you
interested.
didn't have to pay for that separately, because I
No,
think
like,
for
it
us
was-
it's like we have like one meeting free and then we have to pay for it.
A lot of companies also now like do just like free webinars through the company where you can talk to a financial advisor. And so I think those are things to keep a lookout for as well.
Great. Should we get into our takeaways?
Let's do it. Something that Mama said that really struck is that it is never too late. I think especially growing up and seeing how smart they were about it at the age of 25, and now me just really starting to figure out how to do it. I think initially I came into this feeling maybe a little bit behind on how I can never reach a certain level that I want. But I think to Mama's point, it takes being strategic and also understanding that we're living in a different age and time.
I also wanted to just reemphasize some practical tips that Mama had mentioned. And even though these aren't necessarily new, I think they're always just good to hear again. So she talked about like savings and living within your means. Savings specifically in like retirement funds, 401k, as well as educational funds if you're thinking about starting a family, so 529. And then I also really liked the point that you brought up about having a diverse investment portfolio so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and I think for me, Mom, don't feel so much guilt about convenience. It's okay to pay service fees and the tips and all that for Instacart. So I will be using that more often.
Thanks for joining us on 3 Takes. If something we shared sparked a new thought or opened up a conversation with someone you love, we want to hear about it. DM us on Instagram at 3.takes, email us at connect@3takes.com, or visit us at www.3takes.com. And if this episode meant something to you, share it with another mother, daughter, or sister in your life. It's how we grow and keep the stories moving.
There is a podcast which I listen, Network and Chill with your rich BFF.
You have never listened to that?
Okay, stop. Edit. Why are you bringing that up if you didn't do that?
Like, dear,
I can tell you things that I actually listen to if
Okay, edit. No, I swear I listened 4 or 5, but I really want to say